This is the Dollemore Daily, and I'm Jesse Dollemore. You know, oftentimes there are stories out there that don't get the traction that they need. They don't get the eyeballs that they need. They don't get dedicated time to them because they're not sexy, because they're not super clickable. And I'm afraid that this is going to be one of those stories because it doesn't zhuzh you up. It doesn't rev people's engines talking about inspectors general across the landscape of our government. But it's critically important, not just for the proper functioning and the oversight function of our government, but also to hold a president accountable who feels like he is above accountability. Donald Trump has so little respect, if any respect, for the Constitution of the United States and the constitutionally mandated and organized separation of powers, that he is now firing willy-nilly Inspector General after Inspector General after Inspector General when they have brought to light whistleblower complaints and start investigating he or his cabinet officials that are mixed up in dirty dealings and going around Congress, or generally just bringing to light in their mandated by law position deficiencies in the executive branch. First, I want to talk about what exactly the Inspector General role is and how it came about. In 1978, there was the Inspector General Act of 1978. That's what they called it. This came as a result of Richard Nixon's rampant, historic corruption. Congress decided that we needed a system in place where oversight, an independent investigator, kind of like internal affairs among cops, that there would be someone in every single agency to report twice a year to Congress. It's all mandated in the law. It's not a suggestion. Whistleblower complaints, for instance, once a whistleblower complaint has been investigated and reported to the head of the agency, they have 7 days to report. Mandated 7 days. Not they may do that. They shall report within 7 days to Congress. Again, checks and balances. Now, I'm going to read from the statute in the specific section where it talks about the purpose and the establishment of the inspectors general. In order to create independent and objective units, 1, to conduct and supervise audits and investigations related to programs and operations of the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Commerce, Housing and Urban Development, Interior, Labor, Transportation, the Community Services Administration, EPA and the General Services Administration, the National, NASA, the Small Business Administration, and the Veterans Administration, to provide leadership and coordination and recommend policies for activities designed to promote economy, efficiency, and effectiveness in the administration of, and B, to prevent and detect fraud and abuse, such programs and operations, and 3, to provide a means for keeping the head of the establishment and the Congress fully and currently informed about problems and deficiencies related to the administration of such programs and operations and the necessity for and progress of corrective action thereby is hereby established in each of such establishments an office of Inspector General. This position is specifically created to monitor fraud, waste, abuse, conflicts of interest. It's not a suggestion. And Donald Trump, who is so allergic to accountability, so disdainful of transparency, is systematically getting rid of lifelong public servants who are doing their job to make certain that taxpayer dollars are being used correctly and that people in positions of power are not running amok. And Donald Trump won't have it. April 3rd, Donald Trump fired Michael Atkinson. You'll remember Michael Atkinson was the intelligence community inspector general who did his legal obligated job by filing the whistleblower complaint relative to the call that Donald Trump made to President Zelensky in Ukraine, where he offered the quid pro quo. Yeah, we'll sell you those missiles, but I need you to look into some stuff for me. Some things that will personally benefit me, politically benefit me. Fired him. The Department of Defense. On April 7th, Donald Trump fired Glenn Fine, who was just being appointed to be a watchdog to oversee over $2 trillion worth of coronavirus stimulus spending. $2,000 billion he was going to ensure was spent responsibly and without conflicts of interest, without paying out contracts to political friends and their companies, to not enriching people personally, to make certain that the hard-working taxpayer dollars were spent correctly. There's another element, by the way, going back, that to fire an inspector general, you need to give Congress 30 days notice. Donald Trump has not been doing this. Glenn Fine was replaced by a guy named Sean O'Donnell, and this is becoming a pattern with Donald Trump. He fires a person, replaces that person with someone, and then doesn't the other person doesn't leave their other job. For instance, Sean O'Donnell is still the Environmental Protection Agency's IG. So he's overseeing 2 IG offices, diluting his attention, so he's not able to do either job effectively. He's the IG for the Department of Defense, a massive, massive organization, a huge agency, and also the EPA. How can he effectively do both jobs? The answer is he cannot. May 1st, Donald Trump fired the Health and Human Services Acting Inspector General, Christy Grimm. Why, you may ask? Well, she released a report on the situation in the country, in the hospital systems in this country, with regard to coronavirus. She revealed that she had found severe shortages of testing supplies and widespread shortages of personal protective equipment. This report was released in the midst of Donald Trump taking the stage every single day at his coronavirus briefings and lying and saying the exact opposite of what his own administration had found. And when she released this report, Donald Trump, the one always to push back and call things lies or Trump attacks or never Trumpers or witch hunts or hoaxes or dossiers is actually what he called this report. He fired her. Replacing her with Jason Wida, a former Jones Day lawyer. Jones Day, thick as thieves with the Republican Party, that law firm is. There's all kinds of Jones Day alum that are scattered throughout this administration. Trump loyalists, because that is ultimately what Donald Trump wants. Donald Trump doesn't want to be pushed back against. He wants people who will toe the line, look the other way, while he violates the emoluments clause of the Constitution, while he profits hand over fist from his position as President of the United States. They'll look the other way for these ethical and financial conflicts. That's what he wants. Donald Trump just fired Steve Lennick, the Department of State Inspector General, because he was just looking into not only the fact that Mike Pompeo was having staffers, political appointees, walk his dog, pick up his dry cleaning, make dinner reservations for he and his wife, where it's a government paid servant, personal assistant in his life. Now, Donald Trump has come out and said something stupid about, well, if he's on the phone with Kim Jong-un, why is that such a bad thing? Hey, would you make that dinner reservation? I'm on the phone with Kim Jong-un. Ridiculous.
Well, I don't know anything about it. I heard about it at the same time maybe you heard about it. I don't know anything about it. I mean, you mean he's under investigation because he had somebody walk his dog from the government? I don't know. Doesn't sound, I don't think it sounds like that important. I mean, you have a man that's supposed to be, and he's a brilliant guy, #1 at West Point, #1 at Harvard, I believe, Harvard Law School or close. But he was #1 at West Point, #1 at Harvard Law School, or very close to #1. And they're bothered because he's having somebody walk his dog, as you're telling me. I didn't know that. I didn't hear that. I didn't know about an investigation. But this is what you get with the Democrats. Here's a man supposed to be negotiating war and peace with major, major countries, with weaponry like the world has never seen before. And the Democrats and the fake news media, they're interested in a man who's walking their dog, and maybe he's busy, and maybe he's negotiating with Kim Jong-un, okay, about nuclear weapons, so that he'd say, please, could you walk my dog? Do you mind walking my dog? I'm talking to Kim Jong-un, or I'm talking to President Xi about paying us for some of the damage they've caused to the world and to us. Please walk my dog. To who? A Secret Service person or somebody, right? I don't know. I think this country has a long way to go. The priorities are really screwed up.
The government shouldn't be in the business of the taxpayers. Shouldn't be in the business of paying for personal assistants to do personal things. If you want to live that kind of lifestyle where you have a butler, go into the private sector. Hire someone to be your valet. Mike Pompeo. Further, he was also getting ready to wrap an investigation of a multi-billion-dollar arms sale to Saudi Arabia that he and Donald Trump had cooked up, going around subverting Congress on this. Right before he drops his report, he's sacked. Replaced by a former Pence employee in Indiana named Stephen Ackard. Stephen Ackard. A guy with loyalties to Mike Pence. Further, it just gets worse and worse. This Stephen Ackard is keeping his job within the State Department, so effectively, as the IG of the State Department and keeping his other job at the State Department, he's overseeing himself. He's the guy who's going to blow the whistle on himself if he does something wrong or unethical. Come on. That's not how oversight works. That's how Donald Trump thinks it should work, because it won't rain down on him. I'm going to read from the Washington Post here. According to the law, the administration must notify Congress 30 days in advance before firing an inspector general. But multiple sources told me that Lennox's last day was Friday, the same day Congress learned of his ouster. Ackard showed up at the office Monday morning and immediately assumed the boss's role. Yet, Ackard is keeping his job as head of State Department's Office of Foreign Missions, a Senate-confirmed political appointee position he has held since September. Adding the Inspector General's job to his duties essentially means he will be overseeing himself. This cannot stand. This is egregious. And finally, the Department of Transportation Secretary, or Inspector General, was let go when he was in the middle of investigating Elaine Chao, Mitch McConnell's wife, for improperly steering contracts and dollars, hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars into Kentucky, a state which gets far more in federal tax dollars back into the state than it puts out. Mitch Bem was replaced by a guy named Howard Skip Elliott, who, again, is another guy who's doing two jobs now and is now in a position to oversee himself, to oversee the other department that he leads, keeping his position as head of the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration. The Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure tweeted this. On May 15th, President Trump designated the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration Administrator Howard Skip Elliott as acting Department of Transportation Inspector General after removing Mitch Bem from his position, raising concerns about conflicts of interest created by Elliott's simultaneous roles as an agency head and acting IG. It's like having a cop who is killing unarmed citizens willy-nilly also be the head of the organization that oversees looking into dirty cops. Donald Trump loves this. He either spreads them so thin they can't do both jobs, or he puts them in a direct conflict of interest. Even if they don't want to be in it, they're in it. So two things need to happen. These individuals need to quit their other jobs, resign from their positions, choose which one they want to do. You can't do both simultaneously. And two, Congress needs to completely revise how this position is handled. It needs to appoint either an independent commission to see whether or not an IG can be fired. You can't just put Donald Trump in charge. You can't put any president in charge of firing the people that could possibly be looking into them. No. This needs to be changed because Donald Trump is being allowed to do whatever he wants like he is a rogue king. And he is not. He is but a man who has the honor to serve us in the highest public servant job in the nation. He shouldn't be profiting from his position. He shouldn't be in a position to be firing people who are there to oversee that he acts correctly and ethically and morally and uprightly. Like I said, not sexy, but very important. Exceedingly important. I'd love to know what you think. 714-576-4054. Email me, daily@dollemore.com. Look, I really hope, I don't always make this ask of the audience, but I really hope that you will share this video, especially if you're here. If you made it to the end, you didn't click away because it wasn't sexy enough for you. Share this video with your friends, with your family. Put this on Facebook. Share this on Twitter. If you got a Reddit account, share it on Reddit. The alarm bells need to be sounded. We all know Donald Trump is corrupt. We all know that he has disrespect for not only the American people, but the founding documents of our country. We know that. But we cannot stop being outraged at the outrageous. And that is exactly what this is. I'll end with this. I appreciate every single one of you who spends any time engaging with my content. I would greatly appreciate it if you would just consider becoming a channel member here on YouTube for fewer than $2 a month. If I was able to marshal the size of my audience, I'm just over 175,000 subscribers now. If I could just get 1 or 2% of my audience to become a channel member for $2 a month, I would be completely unencumbered from YouTube's arbitrary rules on monetization and just their community guidelines. And I'd be able to cover stories just like this, do deeper dives, do a lot of my own investigative reporting. I'd appreciate it. I love you guys. I appreciate you. Be genuine and take care of one another.